What is up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab, episode 127. I'm your host, Rob May, all the way from Japan, and joining me, as always, is Andres Gomez, all the way down in Georgia. What's up, Andres?
What's up, Rob? Just you and me this week, but nevertheless, we
Absolutely.
have an exciting content patch coming up, so I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, this week we're going to be talking all about Brig and Doom's super mega PTR slash extra PTR changes over the last 2 weeks that we missed with the super show for Ash last week. So we're going to be kind of going back retroactively, talking about the changes. And then we're going to touch on, if we got time at the end, a little bit more of the things about XQC and Surefour and Jane and Seagull's discussion points on the changes they'd love to see with Overwatch and the problems with the game. Again, this is something that is not a extensive topic that we should be able to address on a short form segment of the show, as a lot of people are doing long form discussions, i.e. their discussion is at length at like 2 or 3 hours and intermittent with all of them on YouTube. You can go and check that out if you like. I won't be putting a thing in the show notes because you can probably just Google it or type it in YouTube and find it very, very easily. But that being said, Andres, let's jump through a few announcements. You want to touch on game night?
Yeah, absolutely. Our game night is coming up, as always, at the very end of the month. The last Friday of every month, we're holding up our game night. This time around is going to be on the 30th of this month. So mark it in your calendars. Get ready. New Year's, or not New Year's, but the holidays game night is coming up. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping that we get a little bit of the announcements either before or after this time so that we know what skins we're getting for this winter event, right? Because it's getting close. We had our Black Friday sales. Things are settling. I'm ready for my good old Snowy Kings Row and my Snowball Offensive rolling in here.
If they keep doing it like they've been doing it, hopefully we'll get more maps that get the treatment, right? It seems like every time they try to
The
more,
treatment.
yeah, the Christmas treatment. They do it for Halloween too, so it's kind of cool.
Yep. And additionally, we have a sponsor, of course, which is Top Score Solutions. Ben, or I Need Peeling, in Discord is offering esports field consultations and business help. If you're looking to be getting into coaching, starting teams, doing apps and services, boosting sub bases, or just working in esports in general, this is the guy to talk to. Check out topscoresolutions.com or find him on Twitter at Topscore Esports. On top of that, we always have our partner, Switch, with Omnic Meta. He's doing some extensive things, trying to basically beef up his engine with regards to the player stats and include a bunch of issues that he's running into with the new Ash inclusion into the actual game, prepping for competitive drop with Ash in it, I believe, this coming week. So you can get ready for that. And last up is our Humble Bundle monthly affiliation link. You can check that out by typing !humble in the chat or in our Discord. That's going to do it for all of our announcements, John. Just let's jump into the long form builds. So what we got as a brief update is November 14th and November 20th, as well as the 21st, there's a hot fix of just some changes that hit the PTR. In the PTR, there were 2 passes on Doomfist and Brigitte in particular, and then the first pass also hit Bastion, McCree, Reinhardt, Soldier, and Torbjorn. So these are a mix of just other little things for the other guys, but Doomfist and Brig are the main 2 adjustments. So let's get into it here. We'll actually start with Bastion because his is more of an interesting one. Andres, why don't you tell us what's up with Bastion?
Yeah, Bastion's getting a little bit of a tightening. He's basically getting a little bit more ammo in his and recon form, up from 25 to 35 bullets in every one of his rounds. And also, Sentry is getting a little bit of a buff. The weapon spread is being decreased 33%. So making it a little bit tighter and allowing people who can track their opponents really well to be able to get more shots on them. So interesting changes. Bastion right now stands as a very niche pick. It's one of those picks that requires your team to work with you to really get the most juice out of it. But it can work really well in certain strategies and even at pro play we've seen them play the Bastion. So it'll make the strategies, I think, a little bit stronger. But that being said, I don't think that this change in particular will be making Bastion the new meta or anything like that.
Yeah, Bastion definitely got a really interesting tuning with the ammo increased. I feel like that's just going to make him a little bit more viable running around rather than just like having to post up all the time. Remember when we got the spread reduction and then we also got the range, mid-range increase for the fall off damage for his recon running around? That was a pretty big thing that helped him a little bit more. So this is kind of like them kind of jabbing Bastion up to the forefront just a bit more. And then the sentry thing is actually not just a broad brush like buff to how small the spread is, but this is actually a very slow invert spread. And what I mean by that is when you're shooting like Soldier 76, like an assault rifle, it'll like slowly increase the spread but while you're shooting. Well, when you go into sentry mode, it's a very slow tightening of the reduction on where you're shooting. It's really slow. So after you shoot about almost like 20 to 30 shots, it'll kind of go down, kind of like a zero in to a smaller circle and tighten up your range, which is nice if you're kind of able to station up and set this up. And I heard Color Bastion talking about this change, and she was saying that it does feel nice when you have to hold down the trigger a lot longer while you're in sentry and you want to run through things and confirm kills that are running away. It's quite nice. And the other thing about it was the recon one was the much bigger change. But there is a little bit of an issue with Bastion with regards to this new thing. Is she would love to have the spread and also the ammo. Like when you get low in all of your heroes, the ammo sounds like it's clicking out towards the low end of your clips, and then it'll tell you like when you're out of ammo, kind of like give you a little audio cue. And she was also saying that like she wanted to have some kind of audio cue where it would kind of zoom in the audio cue or like up the frequency or lower the frequency when the zoom was going in, as well as a audio cue for when you're running out of ammo on your main sentry gun, like the machine gun. There's no audio cue when you're getting lower on your clip. So she was saying that
that's
those are
interesting.
two big issues with the
for the sentry
right
mode, the running out of ammo part can be very useful just because the clip is so big inside. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell whether you're in the middle of it or not without taking your eyes off of the action for a second and looking at it. So that could be
right.
pretty interesting. I also like the way that they did this where you get more accurate the longer you're pressing it. So when you go into sentry mode and you start attacking a person, your spread is still going to be quite large, but as you keep firing, it slowly kind of like hones in on your target, which basically punishes enemies who allow you to stay in sentry mode for a long time firing at them. But then you also have to gauge that yourself, right? Like going into sentry and just firing right off the bat is not gonna get you a lot of results. You have to be there for a little bit of time, making it on the Bastion side. Yeah, firing. So you have to make the decision as a Bastion, right? Whether you can stand there for a significant amount of time to make it worth it or not. At that point, it might be better to just stay in recon mode and use your larger clip size, to just fire away.
Something really interesting too is how with Soldier you want to burst fire where you like click and let go.
Right.
To keep the spread small. With Bastion, it's you want to click and keep tapping.
The opposite.
So that it stays running on the smaller crosshairs.
It also incentivizes you using the turret, right? Like you're a turret, so just blast away. The longer you blast away, the better it gets.
Yep. So it does have that little bit of a benefit, but it's so new and definitely not in comp yet. So it's really hard to gauge whether or not that is a thing that you want to do and fundamentally shifting your Bastion playstyle to start doing that, or if that's just something that's like a nice feature when you're in turret mode to confirm kills or to reward you for setting up well.
Right.
All right, let's move into the big elephant in the room, the Brig changes, boys and girls. This is the most controversial thing that I can even remember seeing in the game. People have been upset and angry at this hero for a long time. The archetype of goats induces PTSD with some players and also like an intense amount of boredom. So let's get into it. The first pass was that Shield Bash was not going to stun or deal any damage through a barrier anymore. And this was also proven to be quite buggy, meaning that if you start the shield bash and you're like any of your body is touching a barrier, like let's say you're inside of a Winston bubble and any part of the barrier is touching the bubble and you go mostly in the bubble and stun, it doesn't do any damage because the hit registration was registering on the barrier before and thus negating all damage and stun. And then the same thing would happen with the weird curvature on Orisa shields if you're not managing your shield position well. And the same thing happens when you hit Reinhardt kind of like in a T position, like perpendicular to his shield. It would be super inconsistent whether it would register and stun or not. So that was a big thing. And then the next wave hit, which was Shield Bash's damage went down by 45. So it was 50 damage and now is 5. These are the two main ones. And we're going to get into the Inspire ones. I'm going to let Andres take the wheel on the Inspire ones. What's going on with the passive?
With the passive, the cooldown is going down between the triggers. So, you know, when you hit somebody with your flail or you're able to trigger your Inspire somehow, there is an internal 1.5 second cooldown between ticks of your heal. So every tick, you kind of like heal a little bit around you. It's not like a constant, continuous healing, kind of like Lucio is. Brigitte is kind of like a pulsing heal. Like every once in a while, you pulse out. It used to be 1.5 seconds. Now it's down to 1 second. So you're going to be able to heal half as much, or no, half as much more as you could before. Also, the duration of the heal, once you can affect somebody, it goes up from 5 seconds to 6 seconds. So if you're able to hit anybody with your heal, they'll have a little buff with them that lasts about 6 seconds where your heal will continue to trigger. And now it triggers 6 times during this time. Before, it would only trigger about 4.5 times on the duration. Now you get a 6 tick trigger with it. So Brigitte being a little bit more proactive as a healer, her healing is going to trigger a little bit more often, is going to last a little bit longer, and the total healing is going up from 80 to 100. So if you're around Brigitte and she's able to affect you, you're going to heal about 100 health total. So I think that they're taking away a lot of the offensive capabilities that Brigitte is getting, but they're making up on the healing side. I don't think that they want to make him completely obsolete. That's what they're saying in their dev notes, basically. Basically taking away some things, giving back some others, tuning her more into the healer category, less into the offensive category. Because a lot of people are complaining that she can do too many things, right? She's a semi-tank, semi-healer, semi-DPS, and she does all those things relatively well. She's not like the best at it, but she's good enough that it's a significant change.
Yeah, there's also the big thing with this change is that this is a bunch of numbers for you guys in audio. So just keep that in mind to kind of like dumb it down a little bit more for just understanding in my mind. I basically was looking at this, and what it means is that you have a lot more wiggle room for almost every single time you hit your flail, hit a stun, or hit your regular melee ability. It's going to trigger. It's kind of the idea is like if you hit them, it's only got a 1 second cooldown, and you have like a really close to a 1 second, if not under a second, cooldown time between times that you can hit people with your flail. So you're just going to be able to trigger it all the time. And then the other thing is they made the duration longer and the total healing higher. But it's not that they're increasing the total healing realistically. It just means that like the total healing goes up because the duration is longer. So don't think of this as like she's getting a massive buff to how much she's healing. Yes and no. She's still healing the same rate. It just lasts longer. That's kind of the idea. So you get to be more durable.
Well,
if you're
her rate is a little bit
move
faster too, right? It takes faster now.
No, this is the cooldown is the only thing that's faster. So you can refresh the cooldown.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't think the tick rate is adjusted at all.
Gotcha.
So it is affected by things like grenade, though, from Ana. If you're running an Ana 3-3 or a 2-2-2 with Ana and Brigitte together, There's also people saying that this is the death of goats, or this is the death of 3-3 comps, or this is like the buff to this comp. There's a lot of controversial opinions, and again, this is something that we can't really maintain because this is a patch that nobody is playing on contenders, and Owl's off, and World Cup is also off right now. So we have 3 of the main things going on in the competitive Overwatch in Tier 1 and in Tier 2 that aren't playing on this patch, and it's still in PTR. So we have a lot of basic like theory crafting on paper predictions with not a whole lot of PTR testing to back it up.
Yeah, to be honest, to predict whether Goats is going to be good or bad just based on this change is too hard to tell because honestly, I don't know if it even changes that much. Like Brigitte is still going to be a huge asset. The only difference is you're not going to be able to be setting up some huge shatters with your Reinhardt. But it's not like things like Tracer or anything counter Goats by any form or measure. So I don't know. I think that the biggest change that this brings is that Brigitte, the shield bash, is taking a
That's the big
huge,
one.
huge nerf, right? Like you no
Yeah.
longer can stun Reinhardts like you could and manhandle them and set up your shatter for your team. You can no
You
longer
can't destroy Winston's
yeah,
anymore.
instant stun Winston and he's jumping on you because the barrier might be in front of you. You can't one-shot tracers anymore. You used to be a huge, huge counter to Tracer and Genji as well. This affects Genji as well. Genji is still counter a little bit by the flail since you can't really deflect her, and the stun still makes you be at a very precarious situation. And same with Tracer. But that being said, it's going to be a lot easier fighting against Brigitte now that the stun does almost 50 less damage. And you can't get one shot as Tracer anymore. You're always going to be able to recall out of it now. If she gets you,
If
you
your
will
recall's
happen.
up, you cannot get one shot. Yeah.
Yeah, unless there's like a McCree that capitalizes on her stun next to her. But how often does that happen? Let's be honest.
Yeah, the other thing that's really interesting about this Brigitte change is not just that you guys are going to keep in mind when this change goes live. This change is going to go live on the PTR or on the live servers, paired with the Doomfist changes, and Ashe is going to be introduced to the meta. So we have 3 major features that are big adjustments to the gameplay, and saying something or another is going to affect goats is really, even if you predict something to be correct, like this is going to be something that boosts Ghost's popularity or makes it even more viable, it just looks different, or it's going to make it worse and Ghost disappears. Whether or not those things are true is relatively not the thing you want to be looking at. The thing that you want to be looking at is whether or not it is related to the holistic approach of the patch, right? Because we have more than just this at place. And even if something is true and your prediction's right, it's not going to be solely attributed to Brigitte's changes. It could be one of the features, right? So that being said, let's actually look at what happened to Doomfist at all and go from there. So Doomfist got a lot of readjustments to almost every one of his abilities outside of the Rocket Fist and the actual shooting. So Rising Uppercut used to allow you to not be able to control your character when you get uppercut for 3 full seconds or until you landed. And now it is less than a second. It's 0.6 seconds is the only time where you lose your loss of air control, which is relatively the air time when you get uppercut into the air and reach the peak. It will no longer like allow you to not move, basically. So now you can move when you get uppercut and try to dodge his abilities. Additionally, Seismic Slam has a max range reduction from 20 meters to 15 meters. So the Seismic Slam is the one where he like has the little indicator if you're high enough and it can hit the ground. The max range that you can go is 15. That I believe the max range is also affects how much damage you can do with this, but I could be wrong. I forgot to talk to my Doomfist guys beforehand. But let's just work off of the assumption that this is nothing to his damage right now, but just reduces the total like length that you can go with the indicator. And then on top of that, the victims that get hit by Seismic Slam don't lose air control when they get sucked in. So when you get sucked in, you can still move side to side and get sucked in, but you don't lose your movement while you're in the air, like with a jump.
Those
And
three
then there's
alone are
meteor
some
strike too.
huge changes. Like I think they're gonna fundamentally change the hero quite a lot. And I think that these changes are for the better. And let me tell you why. First of all, I've been trying to learn Doomfist, and once you start getting the hang of it, he's a very satisfying hero because you can just dive in, to punch one hero, kill them, get out. You feel super mobile. You are super oppressing, and it feels great for you. But it feels really bad for everyone
Hmm.
else that you're killing. And you can argue all day, like, oh, get good. Just look at it after the Doomfist, counter him, flashbang, sleep dart, Zarya shield, whatever you need to do. And yeah, that is true. But done right, Doomfist can do this so often and so constantly, out of weird angles, that is just impossible to be on the lookout for him at all times. And what's worse is that because his abilities set you up so easily, any Doomfist that sort of learns this kind of thing can start doing a lot against heroes like Zenyatta, like Anna, Brigitte. I mean, you name it. There's a ton of heroes that you can do stuff against. Maybe not so much against Brigitte, but heroes that are very
It basically
vulnerable and
shuts off a
squishy.
bunch of your abilities too, because like if you get hit by this with Ana, and you're lagging like I do a lot because of your ping, you can't even dart him. You have to basically see him while he's slamming and get the dart off before he triggers the uppercut, or I just die instantly. And if he has any height, the damage just nukes you on Ana or Zenyatta before you can even realistically react.
Right. Now these changes that he can still do those things. He
Do
can
what he did
still
before. Yeah.
dive in, uppercut you, hit you in the air, and hit you. The only difference is that now you're not gonna lose control of your character as he's doing all these things to you. Now, one of the worst things that Doomfist can do to you is when you're close to like an abyss or a hole or anything, and he
He can just
uppercuts
uppercut
you.
you off of it.
Yeah, if he uppercuts you, you slowly watch as you fall away from the map with nothing that you can do. And honestly, it's pretty funny to do. And if you're playing Doomfist, I recommend you do this before the patch goes through because it's actually pretty fun. Just watching like a Winston that just used his leap just fall into the abyss, or any other hero, like you can't get back. It's impossible. You lose control while you're in the air, and it feels really bad to die like that, right? Like, oh, I could save myself, but the way the ability is
I
coded
can't
doesn't allow
move.
me, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's
Now it's
gonna
more in line with Lucio boop is basically what you're gonna
yeah,
feel. You can get booped off by Lucio still, like you have been always, but Lucio, when you get hit by the ability, it doesn't like magically require you just to like be doom and gloom. Like you can actually move around while you're in the air.
yeah, it's more in line with any other boop that's in the game. You
Yeah.
still have mobility even as the boop is happening. You can still counter the momentum of the
Hmm.
boop and get yourself back in, or if he doesn't boop you at the right angle, you're kind of screwed. Um,
I love that this doesn't restrict Doomfist for not being able to not do what he did before. Right? Like if you're good at Doomfist and you understand how this works and you play him a lot, like our guy that we had on a couple months ago, Chipsa's still going to be able to do everything he was able to do before because he's really good at the hero. And he can go in and do this and delete people and get out. But what is it doing now is it's asking Doomfist to predict the movements now of the heroes that he wants to kill, or he has to close the gap between himself and who he wants to shoot after an uppercut or after a seismic slam to confirm.
Yeah, and now you're gonna have to assess as Doomfist, right? Like once you're in the air, you're gonna have to pay attention to what direction the opponent wants to take. And to be fair, it's not like once they're in the air, they're gonna be able to move everywhere they want. Whatever
Right. It's
whatever
still limited.
direction they choose to go, they're still gonna be falling in a predictable arc that you're gonna be able to read if you're a good enough
Right.
player,
Right.
and you're gonna be able to track, if you're good enough with that. All of his abilities though have been shortened a little bit too. The seismic slam, it's a little harder to land now. Like it's always been an ability that you had to gain some practice with, but now it's even more so. It has a shorter range, and when you pull them in, they're gonna be able to move out of it. They're not gonna lose air control they did before. So not only are you gonna have to be more precise in landing the seismic slam, you'll also have to land it in a way that you're gonna be able to tell where they're gonna land after it, right? Because it's still gonna be a little unpredictable. You still have to land the uppercut afterwards to do the full combo. So it's just gonna require a little more finesse on the part of the Doomfist to be able to land his combos. And Doomfists that are not really up to par with that or that haven't practiced enough are going to feel these changes really hard, I think.
Yeah.
Doomfists that dedicated time are still gonna be able to wreak havoc. But that being said, Doomfist will notice the changes. I think that we're gonna see a lot less Doomfist, at least for a while. And if you actually see a Doomfist, fear for your life, because Doomfist mains are gonna be rare and really good.
There's another thing too that you're going to want to keep in mind is the Meteor Strike changes. So Meteor Strike had the inner ring damage radius shrunk. So instead of it being at, I'm sorry, the inner ring radius was increased. I apologize. The inner radius has been up. So instead of it being this tiny little dot of a meter and a half, it's now 2 meters in radius. So it's a 4 meter diameter. And it's still going to deal the same damage. It's still going to be 300 damage full, okay? But the big thing is it no longer just starts in that ring and then decays off towards the outer ring. But outside of that small little inner ring, the damage outside of it, the max damage you can do outside of that ring is now 200 closest to the ring in the center. And then it will fall off to 15 there. So basically, the fall off damage is going to be significantly less if you're not being precise with the center of where you're hitting people with regards to your Meteor Strike. And everyone else rejoice, because a lot of the times if you see the indicator on the ground and you're like a zero mobility hero like Ana and Zenyatta, amongst other heroes that are also zero mobility and or just don't have their mobility up at the moment, they can get out of the way and not take a full 200 one shot if you're outside of the center. Basically, if you're Ana, you can get out of the center if you're full health, grenade yourself, or prepare a dart for him when he lands, and then you can confirm. Can you still do the same amount of damage in a grab? Absolutely. You hit the center of your ult into the Graviton Surge and everything still dies. And you get the nano boost. So if you're nano boosting prior to a Meteor Strike, you can actually still confirm in that center radius because your damage is going to be over 200 if you're in that area, and you'll be okay. So just keep that in mind. It's going to make you commit more resources in order to killing people in the outer rings than just getting a free kill on Ana existing inside of this like relatively medium area or Zenyatta. And all of the support mains like myself rejoice, because a lot of times I just make sure that if I hear Meteor Strike, I try to burn all of my cooldowns before I die and then just stand still and hope I don't pass out. or just call for the Zarya bubbles or whatever, or a speed boost. Those are the only two ways that I can get out of that.
Yeah, before you had to jump through hoops, I would try to like get near a corner just in case he chose like one
LOS
side
it.
or the other. I could maybe like go in, but like really good Doomfist would like do it like right in between the corners, so you'd sometimes still be screwed. Yeah, like you said, this basically buys time to any squishy that is ready to like be ready for the Doomfist to get out of the inner circle and not die. There's still a chance that you might trick him, right? If you're still able to read the person, they're gonna turn around the corner, and you just do it in front of them. You still be able to land it. You just have to bullseye it, basically. No longer you can get away with just hitting like the sides. You have to hit right in the center, unless they're already really hurt. In that case, you might already kill them. But that
you
being
can still
said,
play like synergy stuff, which is nice, right? You can run an Orisa pull to the center of it still and get things like that, or Lucio boop them to the center.
right? Yeah. You can still set up plays, so the ultimate's not useless. Just not a sure like one shot kill for really experienced Doomfist. And that being said, really experienced Doomfist, we're already using this ability as a repositioning tool or as an escape tool sometimes. If the person was alone by themselves, they might use it on them. But for the most part, they were. If you watch some of the highest Doomfist playing, sometimes they just use it to climb up really, really high up in the map, and then come down and kill a Pharah as they're coming down, or just seismic slam into the Zenyatta anyway, because the strength in Doomfist was never in the ultimate anyway.
Yeah. So let's get through the other things here, and then maybe we'll circle back to other things and how they're affected with these two heroes. McCree, and all of the McCree mains rejoice with Ash being in there, has a little bit more viability with regards to Fan the Hammer. The damage has been increased by 10 to 55. This is not the total damage, ladies and gentlemen. This is a per round Peacekeeper shot buff. So this is really big news. Andres, you had a lot to say about this when you first heard the news. So why don't I give this back to you?
I was pretty happy about this. They had taken this away a while, right? Like Fan the Hammer used to do a lot more damage. I can't even remember how much it used to do back in the day, but they're basically buffing it back up. I think that back in the day
it was 55. To be honest,
it might have been 55 back in the day, but they were too scared about
maybe.
tanks. My crew was doing like too much damage to them or something. But to be honest, nowadays with all the other tanks that are or all the other DPS that are out there, McCree's falling behind a little bit, especially in the sense that you are kind of a close range brawler. You want to be medium to close range so your flashbang can take effect, so your shots are at its full damage. You're actually quite decent at fighting up close because of Fan the Hammer, unlike some of the other hit scans like Widowmaker or Ash.
Soldier too at close range is pretty hard to run.
Yeah, or really up close is just hard to hit those one-shot hit scans if they're really, really up close. But McCree can just, flashbang, Fan the Hammer, finish the job real quick, no problem. But that being said, Fan the Hammer, even compared to abilities like Storm Arrow, are not that effective against shields or anything else. If McCree gets a giant shield in front of him, it takes him forever to break the shield, and then once he breaks the shield, and only then can he get some shots out into like the back line. Because for the most part, McCree also is very immobile. You can't really be doing some huge flanks with him because you're just wasting a lot of time. With Ash, with Hanzo, for example, you just use your coach gun or you climb a wall, and suddenly you have a great angle where you can shoot above the shield, or you just move to the right and the shield is no longer a problem. With McCree, you can't really do that as easily because one,
he only has horizontal movement.
Yeah, you don't have any horizontal movement, and if you choose to do a flank and you're by yourself, you're also very vulnerable. You have no escape mechanics like Ash or Hanzo does. Hanzo has a double jump dash away, and then he can climb walls. Ash has the coach
Hanzo's
gun.
got vertical plus horizontal and a quick jump, and McCree's got like a quick roll, and he has to be touching the ground to do it.
You're ground based when you're doing it, and it's short. Like it's not even a mobility tool. It's more of a continue the pressure kind of tool. Yeah. And I think that the Fan the Hammer change more than anything, because I don't think it's gonna change the amount of things you kill with it. It might be more effective against tanks that you catch off guard, but I think honestly it's gonna be more useful breaking down barriers than anything else. There's
something to be said, Andres, that I was going to run by you to see what you thought. Remember when they adjusted or increased his fall off damage? I believe this also affects the Fan the Hammer. So you could be doing 45 damage like you were in the past at a further range now.
Yeah, I think so too. And if you think about it, you're adding about a total of 60 damage per hand the Fammer. Yeah, 60 damage per Fan the Hammer. Coming. And now that you can roll after it, you're adding about 120 damage to it. So very quickly, you can do 2 Fan the Hammers into a barrier, and you dealt 120 damage more, which, I think is significant in a short amount of time. You might be matching Storm Arrow at that point, because Storm Arrow is like one of the best ways to break a barrier. Man, I've been playing a lot of Hanzo, and it's hilarious when a Winston jumps at you. You just Storm Arrow and fire directly at him.
Barrier's gone.
You break the barrier almost immediately, and you still have like a shot or two left to hit him in the head. So
yeah, it's 70 a shot for Storm Arrows, ladies and gents, and that's not even including.
And you get what, 5?
He gets 6 of them.
Yeah, you get 6.
I'm looking up what McCree gets right now, because I'm pretty sure his Peacekeeper also has 6, doesn't it?
It's 6, yeah.
I'm looking it up. Sorry, guys, for the delay.
I'm pretty sure that for McCree 6, I wasn't just sure with Hanzo. I thought it was 5, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's 6 at 70 each for Hanzo.
Okay.
I have those numbers. I just didn't pull up McCree's. McCree's Fan the Hammer currently does 45 a round if you're close enough and falls off to 22. And he has 6 shots of that. So basically it'll be 6 times 55. Or 2, 4. So 3.
It'd be like
330.
Yeah,
330 total damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do, realistically, you can fan roll fan and do 660. And Hanzo doesn't have that capability because he can
So
just
you might
do
be
basically a normal shot plus 70 times 6. And then that's gosh, my math is bad. I want to say that's 420. Blaze it?
yeah. 420, yeah.
Blaze it
That's,
arrows?
that's exactly what it is, yeah. So you're
And
actually
then if you add a regular storm arrow shot before you do that, so you basically queue up a shot, shoot it, storm arrows right after. That's 420 plus 125.
So that's
And
real nice.
545. So yeah, you're gonna, if you can fan roll fan, you're doing more damage than a storm arrows.
So yeah, you're just using one cooldown, kind of like Storm Arrow, and the roll is about on the same cooldown as Storm Arrow. So you'll be doing a little bit more damage
You
there.
got to be within 20 meters about theirs. 18's when the fall off starts kicking in for
right.
McCree.
So it will definitely be worth it to do it against tanks that you're just trying to mow down real quick, or against barriers that you're trying to destroy real quick, which as McCree, it happens a lot of the time, unless you're playing against a team that has a lot of flankers and it's a lot of dive. And at that point, you're just looking at your sides, trying to catch people with flashbangs, shooting and stuff. I think you're going to have a little bit of a better time against teams that are barrier heavy, which right now is the main issue that McCree has with his lack of mobility.
Yeah, I'm doing a quick thing. So it's 540 damage if you can fan roll fan right now. But if you do that to 55 and you multiply that by 6 rounds, that's 330. So if you multiply that by 2, then you're definitely getting 660. So you get 120 damage buff if you can fan roll fan, and you're getting a 60 damage buff if you're just fanning. So that's quite strong. I can imagine this being really good. If you can like fan roll flashbang fan on a Roadhog, you can just destroy them. Because even if they trigger their heal midway through the damage and reduce stuff, you can fan them after an interrupt with the flashbang and nuke them.
Yeah, fan is gonna do a significant chunk of damage more.
And it's gonna work better through armor too, because you're only gonna lose 5 damage off the top, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't know if like this is going to make McCree like super OP or anything. I think that this is just honestly bring him in line with other characters' output. Like I said, Ashe right now has a huge output with her dynamite. Hanzo has huge output with his dragon and with also Storm Arrow. What does McCree have? Just like a little roll on Fan the Hammer. Like, come on, throw McCree a bone.
Yeah. I'm glad that McCree's getting a bone, and I honestly hope he gets another one because I miss McCree meta days. They made the game so much more fun. And I can kind of see it bringing, if Ashe meta becomes a thing, it can also be pretty fun. But it's like Ashe feels a little bit different than a McCree meta, and I'm glad that she's different enough from Widow and McCree and Soldier. So we're gonna be really seeing some cool stuff. Now,
I am very excited for Ashe. I'm ready for that.
Yeah, you got the golden gun ready to go. I'm a couple more ranked games away, plus the end of the season after hitting diamond. I'm definitely getting my next golden gun soon, and it's going to be the Storm Arrows of Justice, ladies and gentlemen. I'm getting a Hanzo bow. It's the first non-support golden gun I'm going to be getting. So I've been really enjoying him, and I'm trying to learn how to play him safer, because right now I'm hitting shots, but I need to survive longer is my biggest issue. Moving through, we have Reinhardt has a big bug fix. I looked through a ton of bug fixes, and this is the only one that really kind of like caught my eye. And basically, Earthshatter's getting another bug fix, which is good to see anytime he gets one. But this one is going to be talking about Earthshatter not able to crawl over some terrain. And so it's going to be a little bit more consistent again. Is it 100% fixed like it used to be before they did all the changes to it? No. But this is definitely one more less thing that they have to worry about.
I feel like they're never gonna finish with Shatter. It's always going to be like the bane of their existence. They just can't get that ability to just work in every
Right.
situation. There's too many
I bet their
variables.
coders are just like, this ability is a nightmare.
I know. And we have over here Chuck saying McCree super sick right now with triple off support though. I mean I bet it is. If you have 3 supports just pocketing you, making sure you're alive and doing some sick damage. I
Yeah,
bet.
because you can chain stuns with him now. I just thought of that. If you run like a non-goats comp, or if you run like 3 supports, 1 tank, and a McCree, you can flashbang them the Reinhardts down and then stun them with the Brigitte shield bash. So you can still do it.
Right,
you
but
just
I feel
chain the
like
stuns.
that's the thing though. Like McCree needs like a support team behind him, and then he starts shining, right? But
Yeah.
there's other heroes that are a little bit more self-sufficient. Because Hanzo, if
McCree's a
he's
little vain. He needs a fan club to make him work.
yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a little Matt Mercer with all the fans in the background. Woo,
Yep.
McCree!
Woo, McCree! Peacekeepers. All right. We gotta get out of here. So let's go to Soldier 76. Tactical Visor has an adjustment where the Helix rockets no longer shoot automatically wherever the tac visor wants. You can actually move your cursor and aim the Helix rocket. This is a huge change for higher capable players with regards to using this ability. A lot of players will just spam the stuff, and then like the hero guides are just like, don't use Helix rocket during tac visor, or use it before or use it just after to confirm kills or set them up, because you'd have no control over where they're going to go, and they're probably not going to track a projectile properly with a hit scan styled aimbot. So now you can lead your Helix rocket and then fire your tac visor into them.
I actually like this change. It actually always felt a little weird to me that the Helix rocket was bound to the auto aim, because a lot of the time I wanted to fire it somewhere differently than where the auto aim was telling me to do. Like you
Yeah.
had to change your mentality almost a little bit when you were visoring, because when you're firing normally, the way you aim your Helix rocket is almost to the ground, right? You're aiming at their
Yeah, you
feet
shoot them in the feet to pop them up.
and you're trying to predict and so on. But when you're visoring, then like you had to treat it almost like as a hit scan. You had to wait for them to be in the position you wanted and then shoot it, so you would shoot at the right location, and it never felt good, especially when you were at a distance. It actually made it I think sometimes more unreliable to hit in this way, because you were at the mercy of the visor rather than your own prediction there. So I like that this change makes it independent, and then you can keep doing what you've been doing the whole time and keeping the same mentality when you're aiming the Helix rocket. That doesn't need auto aim. Come on.
Yeah. It just makes sense. It's a make sense change, right? We also have Torbjorn getting a buff with Molten Core. The damage is up per second from 130 to 160. So it's going to be doing that amount of damage over the course of time, which is great because this damage is going to be enhanced on armored targets. So you're going to be able to confirm those a little bit faster or shred the armor quicker, whatever it ends up happening. I really like this combination with May ult. If you can set it up with a bunch of zoning techniques, you can May people to freeze them and then drop the Molten Core on the storm, earth, and fire, as they say, right?
You know what would be really cool if like Molten Core would melt the blizzard and it would free up the people. Like it could be like, oh, we can run away, but we're burning now.
I'm just dead inside. That's the reaction that's gonna.
It's like fire and ice.
All right, so that's gonna do it for the hero changes. There's one more sound bug thing that I guess is in the game right now. With the reports were coming in mostly from Ana, where when you would scope, the scope sound would be like ridiculously loud or super quiet or something. And so there's some varying sound effects that were the only way to fix them was to set your in-game sound to 100 and then mess with your Windows sounds on your computer. So hopefully they said that this is hopefully the last fix is going to happen with regards to a bunch of sound cues being off in the game. And I have noticed this with my Ana, like it's like deafeningly loud with my scope when I'm scoping and unscoping, and sometimes my shots are like really loud and sometimes they're not. It's really weird. So hopefully that'll get fixed on the live server. And then we had an update to the known issues list, and guess who is on a lot of these is Ash and Bob. Mainly Bob actually. But Ash is getting a bunch of things that they need to fix that haven't been listed on the PTR yet, which is that sometimes you can get launched into orbit by shooting into a deflect with your coach gun. You literally start orbiting Jupiter, like you're way out there. So that happens. There's also Bob can basically move sentry bastions and cryo frozen maze when they're frozen into their ice block, when he shouldn't be able to do that. They should be able to be grounded and not be moved. And then on top of that, the line of sight that's blocked by Bob if May ice blocks on his head. So it's really weird interaction if you like ice block on, if you're like jumping down, like I need to counter Bob, just go give him a little icicle to the forehead. He won't do anything. He'll just kind of stand there lost, which I thought that was a funny change to list out here. And there's also no audio cue, audio call out when you nano boost Bob. So no one on your team knows if you nanoed Bob. You just hear the like souped up sound, but there's no like Anna saying something about nano boosting Bob. It just happens. It's really weird. So I've noticed this a couple times when I've nanoed Bob when we were on PTR, but I haven't nanoed him in quick play yet because it's useless. And if you're doing it, you're throwing. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if it's that great yet. We'll figure it out in ranked one of these days. And then Winston's jump pack does 0 damage on sometimes when it uses the knockback. So if you knock back somebody with the jump pack, sometimes it literally registers no damage. So we're hoping that gets fixed. And then there's also a really weird thing I wanted to ask Andres about, which is the quote unquote 60 FPS issue with regards to Ash's shooting and when she's scoping in and out. So if you scope in and out, apparently there's a known bug, not by Blizzard be addressing, but a known bug within the community that when you're scoping in and out, that animation feels super sluggish and like drops crazy amounts of frames when you're playing the game in both live and in PTR.
So I don't know if exactly if it's dropping FPSs for me, and I don't know if it's because I've been switching between accounts. Like I've been playing on my main account, I've been playing on my alt account, which I use to practice some heroes, and I was playing also in the PTR, and I've been messing with the sensitivities within those three, but I felt like when I was trying it out in the PTR initially, I was feeling really good with her. I was being very consistent, and now that it's live, for some reason I've been finding myself being really inconsistent with her. So I don't know if it has anything to do with the scoping in, and maybe some FPS drops, but I have noticed some inconsistencies there. I don't know if I have to go back to check my sensitivities, make sure that I'm doing things right, and I haven't matched them. But I'm pretty sure that I went there like last week and checked, and that was okay. So I don't know. So that might have something to do with it, but it might be me or it might be that. I don't know.
Yeah, because there's reports of people using 144 hertz monitors or 240 hertz monitors reporting that the FPS drops from like 200 to 100 or 144 to 60, and people that play in 60 hertz monitors saying it drops as low as 8 when you scope. And I'm not sure if it's some kind of engine interaction with your GPUs or with your CPUs even, but it could be that. It could also just be like a hard, like coded in thing when you're scoping that something is just not connecting properly. Because they did have that issue early on, if you guys remember, where the scope would actually just hide player outlines. And I think that might have had something to do with the new coding on colorblind settings as well as the regular like outline settings. So when you put the scope around people in Ash, and Ash's scope, it literally just disappears. All you can see is the character represented. You can't see the hard outline around them. And that was a big detriment. So when they fixed that, I think some people said that that's when this new issue started coming up, because on launch, when you got to play Ash, it wasn't there.
I don't know, maybe because it surely feels that way.
Fix.
Like before she came out, I was feeling so good with her aim, and then after she came out, I've been feeling so inconsistent with her aim for some reason, and I thought it was me, for the longest time, and I was just like, and it still be me. I don't know. We don't even know if this is a bug or not.
Well, there was
But if
some
there are
reports
some
that some people were
inconsistencies
having it
there, then
beforehand.
I
So
have felt it, yeah, because I was feeling like I was hitting my shots left and right with her. I mean, I was playing in the PTR with a bunch of guys from Omnic Lab, and it was like, yeah, it was like freaking Ash feels good, man. It's like one-on-one translation feels good with his scan, and then it came out, and I'm like, man, I just can't hit anything. So I don't know if it has to
mm,
do with that or not. I would love to say that yeah, it's probably the FPS drops that is affecting my aim, but who
could
knows?
be, could be. I know that I didn't have reduced buffering on apparently for a long time, and I must have like turned it off to turn it back on and forgot to turn it back on. So now I turned it on and played a Hanzo game today. I was like, I can hit these things again. This is great. I reduced my input lag. Yeah. So it was really good. Um, so now this is where we basically spend the rest of the show talking through the stuff that Andres wanted to discuss with regards to the Jane XQC Sureforce Seagull discussion about the meta and Overwatch at large and what they'd like to see changed with the game.
Yeah, well, I just think it's interesting that so many of the seasoned, pros, kind of like Siegel, are speaking out in regards to this because I think that everyone has been there where you're just playing comp and it feels like a lost cause, right? Like for X or Y reason, your teammates are not cooperating, or you're getting a bunch of trolls, or you're getting people that have just giving up and they don't even want to pick good heroes, or, just messing around with you, or they might be having a fight. And you end your Overwatch session not because like how he said it, not because you're done playing the game and you're like, oh yeah, that was good, I'm satisfied, I'm gonna go do something else. But a lot of times you might be ending your session because you're just frustrated and like mad, right? Like, I need to go take a break and I can't do this for much longer. I think that everyone has had at least one of those sessions here and there. um and I think there's a general sentiment across Overwatch that sometimes drives people away from the game or disincentivizes people from playing the game. I think that a lot of people have moved on to other games sometimes for that general feeling, and a lot of these pros are have started brainstorming to how do you solve that, right? What can Overwatch do to not make it feel that way, to make it a more organized experience, less volatile, so it doesn't feel like you're throwing the dice every time you go into competitive. And honestly, it's a big question with a lot of what ifs, and everyone seems to have a solution for it. But I think that the truth is it's much harder than that, right? Because you think that if you do things this way or this way, you're good, but if doing those things then brings another set of difficulties and problems, and you can't make everyone happy at all times. But I think we can all agree that Overwatch does need at least some sort of help. One of the points that Siegel made that I found the most appealing, honestly, was him talking about hard counters in Overwatch. And I thought it was a very interesting point. He talks about when Overwatch first came out, there were counters, but a lot of them were in the form of soft counters. And what I'm saying is McCree versus Tracer, for example, that was like an iconic matchup back in the day. And McCree would counter Tracer up until a certain point where the Tracer would just wise up, and then the Tracer could beat the McCree. But then the McCree could wise up a little longer and then beat the Tracer again. But it was like this back and forth,
Skill matchup.
right? Yeah, and then it became a mind game and a skill matchup, like you're saying, of can you dodge the flashbang? Can you lure the flashbang out and dodge it? Can the McCree read your intentions and catch you with a flashbang and then capitalize with a headshot? Um, and even if the McCree was able to catch you, he still had to like capitalize on that. So it was never like a super hard counter, right? But now that we have characters like Brigitte, on the other hand, even if the Brigitte misses the stun or so, the tool set of Brigitte allows her to never be punished for it. It's so hard for the Tracer to be able to actually kill Brigitte, to the point where she's completely disincentivized to even fight this hero unless she can maybe get like a pulse bomb on her or something and use her ult to finally take her out. And even then, the Brigitte might still be able to like shield the pulse bomb out and it'd be okay. So I don't know. Brigitte in itself hard counters certain characters like Genji too, for example. He can't use the deflect. It's too hard to find around her. The shield also provides so much protection. So I don't know. I think he was talking to that regard of adding heroes that are so oppressive that you can't really feasibly run other heroes, and going back maybe to the point where that wasn't the case. And I like that point, right? Because it allows the meta to be a little bit more fluid, which I think this game needs, right? Like if your team has a really good Genji Tracer, it sucks that they can't really play that Genji Tracer to max potential if the enemy team happens to be playing this particular hero. And maybe the person on that hero is not even at the same level of skill as maybe your super good Genji Tracer. So I don't know. What do you think, Rob, about that?
I mean, I think that there's got to be some, whether it's this particular point or it's some other point, I think that with regards to this, whether it was before or after, I can't even remember when the video launched versus when we got the Brigitte Doomfist adjustments, but that is a very suspicious double change to make right after something like this happens, right? And having some people that are like your poster child streamers that are within the top realms of like XQC and Siegel just being overtly opposed to what you're trying to do as a game development company is pretty telling. And I mean, Siegel's the type of guy that doesn't just sit on Reddit and complain. Like, he doesn't even do that on a stream. He likes to play the game. He likes to enjoy it. He likes to stream. He likes to interact with his community as well as his teammates, whether they're strangers or people that he knows from Dallas. And when you look at the changes with Brigitte Doomfist and stuff that they're adjusting, even simple just like tweaks for McCree, I think what they're doing is making the game a little bit less about the counters and more about like, I think Blizzard kind of just got lost in the development of a hero and kind of like synergizing what they do and kind of like balancing what they do around like the essence of who the character is rather than how they interact with other things. And I'm not saying that like Doomfist was like this originally, because I mean it took us a while to figure out Doomfist and Sombra were so powerful, right? And even Ana, on the outset, people thought Ana was garbage.
Yeah, or the hamster or Orisa. All of them take a really long time to figure out.
Yeah, so like when we see these new heroes, like Ashe is the first hero that I have seen where people are like, this hero is insane. You know, like before we can even start playing it. I don't know, like for me, I feel like this kind of touches on and overlaps with this point about the game of Overwatch being less FPS like and more MOBA like League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm or Dota 2. Where the abilities are more of like what the centralized thing are. And that just happens that most of the heroes that they've released up until the point before Ashe were ability-based heroes and not gun-based heroes. So they felt more MOBA-like. And I kind of like the overlap of MOBA and FPS. That's what drew me into Overwatch. So I feel like if they swing more to one side than the other, then a lot of it's lost for me as far as the luster of the game. So I do like the tandem balance between the two, but I do agree with him in the sense that the game feels a little bit more about picking, countering, swapping, and making it about the abilities that you bring to the table rather than like making frags happen and confirming things around an objective, if that makes sense.
Right. No, and I think you're right. And I think that Blizzard realizes this, and it has to be a fine line, right? Because it's a slight mix of concepts like the MOBA, the FPS. It's been tried before, but honestly, Overwatch is really the first game that's taking it like this far, right? And they're able to like create some crazy heroes and some crazy abilities that we haven't really seen in other games, at least played out like Overwatch is played out. And it's interesting because all of the changes that they're making in the PTR, plus the new hero that they've just added is almost
Mm.
like a reversion of that direction. Because I think you're right. For a little bit there, they were getting a little bit experimental with the heroes that they were bringing out, and they were trying to create these heroes that were not traditional FPS heroes, that instead play Overwatch in a slightly different way. They take advantage of other things that Overwatch has to offer, like mobility, speed, shields, or stuns. You know what I mean? Utility like that. They're not a lot of these heroes that have come out, like Doomfist, Brigitte, Hammond. They're not focusing on their gun very much. Instead, they're focusing on like the mobility of the hero. Can you close the gap? Can you get creative with how you approach the hero?
Mm-hmm.
You're playing with falling out of the sky and like flying everywhere with Hammond and Doomfist, for example. And then with Brigitte, you have like a stun and a shield, and you're kind of like this paladin healer hybrid kind of thing. Um, so yeah, not
And it's
very
important to make the
FPSy
game
at
a
all.
little bit like important to make the game not too much of an SPS or SPF. Like, yeah, your sunscreen. It's important to make this game not too much FPS either, because you're gonna have a different issue. You're gonna have pros upset that they can't run Winston, they can't play heroes like Reinhardt anymore because it doesn't matter. The only reason that an FPS style is gonna fit with an objective-based game like Overwatch is when you have basically like barriers and people that shoot, and that's what the FPS would develop to. You wouldn't have people like, stuff that doesn't like Diva. Remember, like Diva actually wasn't played a whole lot until they made all these big changes where she could just eat everything, and then she was just meta forever. And then now she's got these micro missiles, super aggressive, and reduces the amount of things that she can eat. And then Winston has just always been crazy because of his mobility and his cleave damage, and he doesn't have to like particularly aim right at somebody's face to hit them for damage. So like you're gonna lose Overwatch if you go too much FPS. And I wanted to like people that are harping on
Yeah,
this MOBA
we don't
train
want
are
Call
like
of
really
Duty.
missing out on that, right? We don't want COD. We don't want Counter Strike. Because if we had an FPS that we wanted to play, we'd play those. But we're playing Overwatch because it's not those. And I'm not ignorant enough to say that we're playing Overwatch because it's a shooter and Blizzard made it, because that's not true. Like, just because Blizzard made a shooter doesn't mean that Andres and I even came over here to play the game. We're playing the game because it's fun, and it is a good hybrid of these two things.
I mean, it's interesting. Overwatch is an interesting concept. I'm very like attracted to it. I think is new. I think that they're kind of inventing a lot of things as they go through with the game. So
Right.
some things are gonna be a miss, and even the initial roster, a roster that seemed like pretty balanced with itself, and eventually, I mean, there's been a lot of changes since then, and I think that even since those first initial heroes came out and people started playing them, it started becoming evident that the developers couldn't even fathom how this game was going to be played towards the end, right? Like, you just create these heroes and give all these abilities, and you think in your head like, okay, this is how I want the hero to play and his strengths to be. But then after you give it to the community and they put in like thousands of hours into some of these heroes and get used to the engine and then start doing some crazy things that the developers were like, oh my god, we didn't even think
Yeah.
people would like, we're gonna use
We
them
didn't think that was
like that.
possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we didn't even anticipate for that. Then you have to make certain changes, right? Because you don't even know how the game is gonna feel later until the people have been playing with it. But I think the developers recognize that problem at least, and I think that they're reining it in. They're gone too much far in the MOBA. They give him power, a little bit too much power to heroes that are not relying on their gun as their primary way of getting picks and advancing the front line. Um, and they're adding tools for those players that want to be really good with the guns, with the aiming, with the mechanics, and giving
Or
the
it's just
power
that
a little
people that
bit
are
back to them.
shooting with guns don't feel like they're doing enough. Right.
Right, right. It does feel like it a little bit in this metagame where, Goats is so strong, where McCree is not like that good. Soldier is like not that good. Um, you're using heroes like Doomfist and Brigitte, which like are not really relying too much on their guns. maybe the best.
Watching these high S tier players like Fleta who can just do ridiculous things sitting on a hero holding down a button. It's like that's not what we really wanted to watch.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. Like, I want to see Fleta on the Genji. I want to see him on the Widowmaker, but he has to come out on Brigitte because that is just what the
I
strongest
mean, you can see the
hero in that
Pog
position
champ
is.
on cooldown whip shot stuff, but it's like once every 8 seconds to see a decent play is not what you're tuning in for.
And don't get me
side.
wrong, I like that there are heroes like Brigitte in the game, right? That
Yeah, of course.
that can bring like that certain utility, and like if somebody is beating you up with a hero like Tracer or Genji, that at least there's something that you can swap to make up for it. But I think that right now the counter to the skill level is just too high, right? Like they know that people can play these heroes to a certain level, so if they give him power to heroes to counter those heroes, um, in the balance of power is not the same, right? Like if you're an excellent player that has spent a ton of hours into one hero, getting countered by a player who hasn't put in that many hours very easily, just because they have a hero that is so good against you, you can't do much. It doesn't feel that good. So I feel like they need to find a balance there and allow the players who are pushing the skill ceiling to keep pushing the skill ceiling, right? And to be able to differentiate themselves due to their skill.
Let me use that as kind of a springboard in our last discussion piece here, which is utilizing Overwatch's adjustments and things that we're looking at the game into the custom game browser and into exploring and actually making concrete solutions, right? We have players like Jane, XQC, Surefour, and Dan Siegel that are not just sitting in Discord chat in the lobby making a discussion video and uploading it to YouTube. They're making game custom matches with top-level players experimenting. They're finally doing what we should have been doing for a long time, frankly, in the upper level area. If we want changes, we need to go into it and test them ourselves and try it, which is we're adjusting things like the time that it takes between charge rates for your heroes to gain their ultimates, reducing the total amount of ultimates per game, making adjustments that way, making adjustments on how long it takes to cap things, how fast certain other things are, respawn timers being a major adjustment point. That was something they touched on for an extensive amount of time. Making the game more offense driven so that it's not about like stalling for an eternity on the final point of something and get rolled the whole match, but rather making it about how fast you can roll the enemy team and when you can actually full hold people on defense where it's not like in your favor. That feels really more like Team Fortress 2. And then the other addition here is when you play Overwatch, not only are they trying to make it less about the ultimates and more about the heroes and what they can do outside of their ultimate, but like putting in something called a hero ban, because this is something that's been a contention in the game's scene for a long time. Every time we get a new hero, when are we getting bans? There's so many options in the game. We love the ability of swapping heroes. We love the ability of not having a limitation on who we can choose outside of only having one of each one for our team, right? So I think the real question isn't if bans are a good idea or a bad idea for Overwatch, because I think in the long term there's going to have to be something. But it's a matter of like, when is this effective and how are you going to roll this? Because we don't even have a ban for a map yet, right?
I don't know. So I think we might differentiate here on opinions, because I've heard a lot of opinions about this too. Like for example, your Overwatch guys, they're hard advocates for a roll queue.
Ban.
And also bans. Yeah, they like the bans, and you're talking about bans too. I might be on the other side. Maybe it's an unpopular side, but I don't want any bans, and I don't want any roll queue whatsoever. I think that they would make Overwatch very rigid, and sure, they might solve certain problems like now every team will have 2 tanks, every team will have 2 healers, every team will have 2 DPS. So yeah, you'll have a balanced comp into every map you go to, but it takes away
It makes the game more stale.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more stale, and it takes away from a lot of strategy. Like I know that people don't like goats that much, especially because it's very prevalent right now. But I like living in a world where in a certain map, 3 tanks, 3 supports might be the way to go. If you're trying to take the team by surprise or maybe to beat a certain strategy and, making a huge, massive ball of health and healing that can just like take over a space, I think that's a cool strategy. And that came out of like, the creativity of somebody. They were like, hey, let's try this out and let's play it this way. And it has to be played in a very specific style or it doesn't work. So it's like it's not a mindless strategy. Like a lot goes into it, much like dive, which is like the opposite. A bunch of like really spread out people that are really fast and really good at moving and can hone in into a target in an instant. You know what I mean? Just call it out. Everybody like comes in, kills it, disperses away. Is also a really cool playstyle, and I like that we can have all of those playstyles. I like living in a world where maybe you drop down to 1 tank and 1 healer and you go 4 DPS and just become like hyper aggressive with a ton of damage. Or I think it was like Bare Hands that was talking about like a Chinese replay where they were like playing with no tank and using Doomfist as their main tank, just having a ton of heals and damage to protect him and just using him to spearhead into the front line. And I think those are cool strategies. And if you put down a role queue, then sure, yeah, you might make it a little better for competitive in the short term, where like everyone has to play that. But is it really better? What if you end up with a team where like not that many people are good at tanks, or maybe you're forced to play tank because you don't want 10-minute queues, you want 2-minute queues or something like that. It becomes like, wow, I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, and I agree with Andres, so I'm not even going to add anything to that discussion. So I'm just going to touch on bans and we'll get out of here. But like bans for me is something that I really like the idea of, but I also know that people aren't really looking at bans in any other thing other than comparing Overwatch to something else. And in every stretch that you compare Overwatch bans to another game, it fundamentally breaks down immediately because every game that has bans requires someone to pick a hero and lock it in, which means you cannot change ever. So if you want to have bans in Overwatch, you also will then need to remove the countering aspect and remove the ability to switch heroes, which is not Overwatch. And they have said
Exactly.
in the outset that they're never going to do that. They're not going to allow people to lock in a character and not swap. They want people to be able to swap. And thusly, if you introduce a ban into that format, it relatively doesn't do a whole lot to begin with for starters. It may just remove something that you just don't want to see and you don't want to play against. So that strategy is okay, I guess. But in the long term, I don't think that's really helpful. It's just like, well, you just ban whatever's strong and then you play whatever's next strongest.
Plus,
It doesn't really solve anything.
bans can really backfire too, because you might be thinking, oh,
Right.
let's do bans so we can ban Brigitte and goats can be great. But it could be even worse because then like they can still run goats and then ban like Pharah, and you're like, oh crap, we can't counter goats with Pharah anymore.
Yeah, you ban the meta and then you ban the counter and then you just have a completely new meta where the best two things are now just the things that you're not allowed to play. Like I said before, right?
Or it feels
like,
bad as
bans
an
are just gonna
individual
be
player
there.
too. What if like I've put a bunch of time into Widowmaker and I'm like really good at Widowmaker, and it happens that in the meta Widowmaker is really good because of what other people are playing, but they're like, oh no, Widow's good against us, ban her. And then all the hours that I put into Widow is like, oh
Well,
great, I
okay.
can't play Widow.
For that thing feeling bad, I think that that's probably our weakest argument because that exists in League of Legends, in Dota, and in Heroes of the Storm, where you ban something that's super OP, unbalanced, or whatever the perception is, or maybe you just go into a competitive match against another team in the highest level of competition where you know that guy's the best X in the game and you ban them out of it. It happens.
Well,
And it's
right,
okay to
right.
do
But
that.
for the guy, it's like it feels horrible for the guy. It's like, oh, I'm the best at this, and I can't do it because it's banned.
Yeah, but those games also have a huge plethora of heroes. They don't have like 29. You know what I mean? Like they have like
Right.
50 or 100 or something like that. Like, oh, League of Legends has almost 150 or something crazy now these days. But like again, it goes back to that being an argument you can portray out there. But like to me, if somebody's really good about something in Overwatch, it's not that them getting banned out makes it that much better for you. It's more about if they're gonna play a strategy around X hero or they're gonna play X hero and it's a problem, it's not a problem anymore because you go back to hero select and you switch and it's not a problem. That's Overwatch, right? It's again goes all the way back to locking in things.
Right. You can
And
almost
until
adapt your
Overwatch locks
strategy.
something in, yeah, until Overwatch requires you to lock something in, a ban is no longer necessary. And for those reasons, I'm out. You know?
I honestly, if I'm gonna give any conclusion here about what
Okay.
I hope to see change in Overwatch is I want players that are mechanically skilled to have a little bit more impact in the match that they can currently have at the moment. And I want heroes that who or at least whose skill ceiling is a little limited to be able to not have as much impact
To
in the
expand it.
battlefield. If that makes sense.
Require
Basically,
more of the player to expand, right?
yeah, exactly. Like if a hero can be super oppressive, I wanted it to be because the person playing that hero is what's
really
making
good.
it that oppressive, and
Yeah,
not
exactly.
because the abilities of the hero just happen to make it oppressive against other heroes. And I think that if we're able to tilt into that side a little bit more, I think Overwatch might be a little bit less frustrating because you might be able to have the tools to take matters into your own hands a little bit more and feel less like if you don't have the perfect team comp, if you don't have a main tank because nobody in your team wanted to play main tank or something like that, you might still be able to edge it out a little bit, and not be so frustrated with comp. I don't know if that's gonna solve anything, but maybe it'll make it less frustrating for some people. That's what I'm gonna conclude at.
And we don't really have any tangible solutions, but what we can say is that Widowmaker is a good example of this, and that the changes that we just received for Doomfist is a prime example of basically not changing the hero to be balanced for starters with regards to the meteor strike changes, and changing all of these you can't move things to you can now move while you're getting punched more or less, and allowing it to be that the hero can still do what they were originally able to do, but it requires more of the player to do it. That's a very, very good expansion on kind of what Andres is saying here. So, that being said, we have a few wrap up things to do. First and foremost is Mr. Sadistic for giving us a Twitch Prime sub at the end of the show here. Thank you so much for that. You guys can sub to us on twitch.tv/OmnicLab with Twitch Prime because we are affiliates now, or you can do that of your own accord. Anyways, that is a huge boost to us and helps us with our kind of like day-to-day stuff for the show with regards to like website costs, anytime that we have to move our feeds over to Libsyn, which we're still working on because the back end is so messed up that it's taking us a while. So we'll get there. Additionally, if you want to support the show financially, you can head over to patreon.com/OmnicLab and support us like the fine diamond sponsorship folks do currently. We have Top Score Solutions, Silver Loki, Solo for PS4, Mr. Mars, Jan Jankel, Terry F., Durandal, Roger B., Britmus, Shazir, Chris DePlaya, and Tragic Zach. We have no new patrons this week, and as we said before, since before BlizzCon, there has been a steady decline in our Patreon, and I can honestly say I think it's more or less to do with the game of Overwatch and less to do with us, but maybe I'm in denial. But if you guys want to prove me wrong, please let us know what you're feeling about the Overwatch game. Please, if you want to talk to us about the things that we talked about on today's show, this is great content and stuff that you're going to see discussed in our Discord at discord.me/OmnicLab. Across the table, we talk about this stuff all the time, and please, we'd love to hear more of your input. Additionally, you can find our individual merch for our show. There's been a Black Friday sale across the board. I will try to tweet out something. I believe that until the first week of December or something like that, Spreadshirt is having a 15% off global for all things. So if you want to get some Omnic Lab merch, I believe you can get 15% off and free shipping, or one or the other, something like that, I believe is what the email said. So I'll try to get that link and the discount code to you guys later on. I think that's gonna do it. I'm like fatigued, man. We talked about a lot of stuff today.
Yeah, that was a lot of
next
talk.
week. next week we have some fun to announce for our community. For those of you that are engaged with our Discord community, Andres, do you want to let them know what we're going to be doing next week, right before game night in the morning?
Yeah, I think we're gonna be bringing in a guest, a long timer actually, that we've had. You want to reveal the name?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I think we're bringing in the Shuck Master, a beloved member of our community. He's been a part of it almost, I think, from the very beginning.
Since the beginning.
Was he like the first person on the Discord?
No, he wasn't.
Okay, but close.
But he
was close.
He was right after the game launched. Yeah, he was in the Discord. So.
Okay. So yeah. He's been there for a while. He's a fantastic member of the community. He's a great player, and he's a player that we've seen grow basically parallel with our community as well. He started from the bottom. He was a platinum player when we've all started player, and recently he's hit top 500. He's put in the time.
Last week.
Yeah, he's put in the grind, and if you have ever played with him, you can tell he's a great player. So we're excited to have him. He's been doing a lot of work with Open Division, and he's trying to break it into the amateur Overwatch League competitive play,
tier 3
yeah,
scene, yeah,
and maybe go pro eventually. So far he's shown that he can really put his mind into learning the game. So we wish him the best, and we'll be having him next episode.
We're not quite sure which it is that we're going to be focusing on, but we do know that we're going to spend a good chunk of next week's episode talking about the journey all the way through, kind of like what his kind of experience was climbing for the last couple months or couple seasons, as well as kind of his thoughts on maybe current meta. If you guys are curious, you can submit those questions in our podcast questions section of the Discord. And also, we might even just be pairing it with a map guide. So a good old bonus for the end of November for you guys out there. But please check us out there. We also have 2 iTunes things at the end of the show here from Andrew LJ and C. Luke saying that they're enjoying the show and also the organization for it. Thank you guys so much for your kind words. We really, really enjoy them. Andrew says, great podcast, a lot of useful, fun, and current information regarding everything Overwatch. As a big fan of the game, this podcast has provided a reliable medium for news and an enjoyment of the game. Great work. KFC for everyone is his username, so I thought that was great. We also had C. Luke from the USA saying that he's enjoying the show. Hey guys, thanks for the show. Really enjoy getting my Overwatch news during my commutes. You guys have an obvious love for this, and it's very apparent. Thanks from a PS4 gamer. Really love our console guys. I am deeply looking ahead in the future, and it's been a while since we've done a settings episode, and it's also been a while since we've done a console mega show. So I think we may have a few phone calls to make, Andres. We might be needing to revisit that around this holiday season to get you guys back up to speed on Overwatch settings and console love for you guys out there. Andres, tell the other people at home where they can find you, and let's get out of here.
Yeah, if you want to find me, you can always find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. I mean, I keep it short and sweet today.
You guys can find me on Twitter with the tag @NotRob, and that's gonna do it for everything this week, guys. If you remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. Go in the PTR, go in the live, test the stuff, and don't forget Black Friday merch is good until December 1st, I believe. I got a ton of Overwatch League stuff, as you guys can see on the stream. Go get your stuff while you can. See you next week.
Thanks for everyone who made it to this show. We had a few listeners on the live show today.